Thank you, Dr. Amin, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time to attend this webinar. We do this every 2-3 months, and hopefully there'll be same subjects, but I'll emphasize on some of the changes and some important dates coming up. Next slide, please. Dr. Fateh has already mentioned that questions to be written up, and I'll try my best to answer as many as I can. And if any leftover questions, please don't hesitate to write an email and I'll be happy to respond. Next slide, please. Well, last time, a few months ago, I said, and several months before that, that how the graduate medical education was affected with COVID. Unfortunately, it's still going on, but it's getting much better. And from the clinical point of view, and even from basic science, most of the education now is in person, very limited online instructions. Next slide, please. All these, the process of residency and the exams are extremely stressful and very nerve-wracking, as you can see. You'll go through a lot of tests and exams, and but this is not the end. You'll be doing this even after you have graduated, even after your residency. You'll be doing board exams and recertifications. So you better get used to it. Well, this is a very nervous and critical time for a lot of your friends and a lot of your graduates, because it's only 2 weeks left to the rank order list, and the match day is the 18th of March. So I get a lot of calls and discussions about rank order lists, about getting ready. So this is what it's all about. Next slide, please. Some important issues, and this is getting closer and closer, that the medical school that you go to should be accredited. And on that topic, our next accreditation visit is coming up on the 7th of March. And most of our clinical, basic science faculty, administration, board will be in the island of Curacao to attend the accreditation meeting, which starts on the 7th of March. We already have accreditation, but after 3 years, the accreditation process starts again, and we hope to do very well. We are only 19 of the 70 Caribbean schools that accredited with ACCM and CAAM, and only school that has 2 accreditations. It is important to keep this in mind, because those who have already started in 2020, they'll be required to pass or graduate from accreditation school. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to do any residency or practice in USA. Next slide, please. Some of these policies have already started, because now step 1 will be graded from January 26 onwards. Whoever takes step 1 exam will be graded pass and fail, and there will be no numerical grade. The number of attempts has been also reduced from 6 to 4, and there are new contents. They have already started that since October, November 2020, and you're all aware of it. Communication skill for step 1, and professionalism, ethics, legal issues, safety issues, and practice-based learning for step 2. And they're beginning to get these questions in your exam. Next slide, please. Some more important announcements. There has been increase in the number of matching. There is combined MD and DO match, and for last 2 years, as you can see, there were 2,000 in 2020 and close to 928 in 2021. And these will continue to increase. So there'll be more and more residency spots available for matching, which is good for those who are in MD5 or going through clinicals and in your 3rd and 4th year of your clinical rotation. So there will be more spots available for residency. Another good point to remember, and now we are beginning to get even questions about electives in California. So we're trying to make contacts, and hopefully it will be available for our clinical students for rotation. We already have 2 Avalon graduates matched in California. I get a lot of questions. Can we apply to California? Yes, you can. And the only reason being, we are one of the few schools that are accredited with ACCM and CAAM-HP, and the California board recognizes that accreditation. So don't hesitate to apply to California, those who are in 3rd and 4th year. Next slide, please. There have been a lot of questions, NBME, and now we have introduced Comp NBME for basic science and clinical science. The contents of these exams are reasonably close to a step 1 and step 2. So that's the reason we have introduced this, and as a requirement for you to be certified to take the step 1 and step 2. Those who have a good score on comp exams are very likely to have good scores and pass step 1 and step 2. Next slide, please. And there are lots of NBME exams. I've already talked to you about the comprehensive for both basic and clinical science. And there are a lot of self-assessment exams that you should keep in mind, both for step 1 and step 2. And finally, on the clinical side, the NBME shelf exams. There's one important point to keep in mind here. As you can see, the comp exam is about 5 hours, about 200 MCQ questions. The self-assessment exams are about 5 hours, and the shelf exam is even less. It's only 2 hours. The reason I underline this is your actual step 1 and step 2 exams are actually 8 to 9 hours, and step 3 is actually for 2 days. So when you take these or practice this, you're nowhere reaching the time allotted for step 1 and step 2. So what I strongly recommend is when you do these practice sessions, or your UWorld or UAV or USMLE Step 120 questions, make sure you do full, even if you have to do 2 at a time, do full 8 hours, because everyone that I have talked to after the exams, they say they are totally exhausted. So I want you to practice and get ready for it when you're ready to take the step exams. Next slide, please. The resources to you for step 1. Last time I checked, there were over 20 for step 1 and more than that for step 2. You should not use more than very limited number of resources. It does not work out in your favor. Students have impression, the more resources I use, the better I'm going to do. It doesn't work out that way. It requires tremendous amount of duplication, repetition, and waste of time. So just pick up, I strongly recommend one book and one Q bank. The most popular book is the First Aid for Step 1. A lot of people use pathology. It's a great addition because it also has some anatomy, some physiology, some embryology, and pathology. But if you choose, which you should use, pathoma, then make sure you don't do pathology again in first aid. Take that chapter off. There's no point in repetition. A good Q bank is a UWorld, and it's a very popular one, and you should use it. Some people use additionally, especially for step 1, Lecturio, which is free, available to Avalon students, and some people use Sketchy Micron for preparation. There are a lot of courses. The MD5 students use Kaplan. There's no significant difference between Becker, Kaplan, Pass, or DET. I don't specifically recommend tutors. The last line, the contents are important, and keep this in mind, the 3 P's and the M. About 50 to 60% of the questions, and sometimes it varies from year to year, sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, are from the 3 P's and MQ. What is 3 P's? Physiology, pathology, pharmacology. M is micro, and sometimes you get B, which is biostatistics. So keep this in mind. You have to do well on these 3 P's and M and B and Q. If you do not, you're unlikely to pass, or if you pass, you'll get a very low score. You have to score well in these these topics. Next slide, please. The format, as I mentioned again, it's a one-day exam, 8 hours, close to 280 questions, and you are used to taking all 5-hour exams. So practice in 8-hour sessions. When the time comes, about a month or 2 months before, practice 8-hour sessions on the weekend. Close the door and take the whole exam as if you're actually taking, because most of the time I have read and heard from people, by the time it gets to 6, 7, 8 hours, you're exhausted. So practice at home. They are, 40 question blocks, and it's not that difficult. This year, the new minimum has been set. It was decided in December, and the pass minimum is 196. And you already know for step 1 from January 26, it's a pass and fail. There won't be any numerical grade. But the body that's scoring your exam for pass and fail will know that whether you have got 196 or not. Next slide, please. Step 2, again, resources. I strongly recommend keep very limited. There is no point in getting all amongst the books. You can pick up any you like Step Up to Medicine, Master the Board, Step Up to C2, Step 2, or First Aid, and then go back to your Q bank, which should be ideally UWorld. A lot of students supplement this with good videos and good review and answers and questions from online MEDED, and that is available to you through the school also. Some people they feel in the books there's not much detailed coverage of surgery, say they use Pestana. It's not a very big book. If you want, you can use it. Case files and Anki cards. Anki cards, and there are 5 different types of cards. Ambos has cards, Anki has cards, and other cards. But if you make your own cards as you go along, you will remember it better. It's a little bit more time consuming, but you're more likely to remember. And then add this self-assessment exams. We'll talk about this later. Again, an important point to remember, just like in step 1, most of the questions, 60 to 70 questions, are related to internal medicine. Just like 3 Ps and the B and Q in the step 1, emphasize on what you are going to focus your study time. It should be IM related, 60 to 70%, and I'll show you this is not my making. Next slide, please. Here it is. This is again from contents from USMLE. And if you see the slide for two CK discipline specifications, medicine is 50 to 60%. It varies every year, but this is the average. Surgery is 25-30, pediatrics 25-25. So if you read and emphasize and do well on the top 3, you'll get a good score and definitely pass. Next slide, please. There are some practice self-assessment exams for like in the step 1, it's 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. In NBME step 2, the NBME practice sessions are 9, 10, and 11. These are the most recent ones. I marked 7 because in the older ones, 7 was pretty standard when you start. It's easier one. It gives you a baseline. You don't have to do all 9, 10, and 11. If you have time, you can. But it just after the 7 or 9, do one more, but make sure that each one, don't just automatically take it every 2 weeks. After the first one, analyze, study the results, find out where your weak points are, study that topic little, give extra time, and then take the next one. So you're improving. Don't expect a 10 to 15% jump. Even if you have 3 to 5%, I'm happy. Again, there are good self-assessment exams from UW SA 1 and 2. These are only 2-hour short exams, but they are pretty predictive and helpful to prepare for step 2 CK. And finally, USMLE has come out. They used to have an old one. Now they have a new free 120 questions with answers and explanations. So I would actually do the self-assessment in this order. When you start studying and preparing for step 2 CK, do the NBMEs, then go on to your UWorld SA1 and SA2, and finally do the and each time evaluate yourself. Take a step back, take few minutes and say, okay, where did I miss the questions? How can I get that extra 3 or 5%? And then take the next one. Next slide, please. There's tremendous difference between step 1 and 2. Step 1 was all about basic medical knowledge. Step 2 is all about time management, difference between an application of that knowledge in practice. So that was step 2 CK is. And the difference is involves a lot of reading, and it's tiring and demanding. Remember the number of hours you have to spend. Try to form a diagnosis. So you have to form this habit while you're reading this clinical scenario. Just keep thinking, what is the most likely diagnosis? You have 3 or 4 differential diagnoses. How am I going to question yourself as you're reading? And this comes by practice. There are some clues in the labs, what x-rays I'm going to order, what labs I'm going to order. And then in the description or presentation of the case, they might give you a positive lab sign. Like this one has a leukocytosis with shift. X-ray might show infiltrates on the chest X-ray. And then you're thinking, oh, this sounds like this has pneumonia. EKG might show some changes. So my point is, you will learn this of developing a concept, clinical concept, rather than facts as you did in step 1. But this comes with practice. So keep practicing it. Next slide, please. Application of, remember I said it is all about application of knowledge of basic sciences that you acquired during your first 2 years, and you used it in step 1. It's a 9-hour exam, lot more MCQs. Again, instead of 7 blocks, now you have 8 blocks, and you get some time off in between. Minimal score, the scores for step 2 CK will be numerical, and they have stayed numerical, and they are not going to be changed. Only step 1 is changed, and even step 3 is also numerical. So the minimum score assigned this year is 209. Next slide, please. Step 3, because a lot of our students are taking it. If they have time, I encourage them to take it before even their application. Most of these step 3 exams are taken by the US graduates and most of the IMGs during the time of residency. There is slight catch here, and that is you're required to pass step 3 in the first 2 years of residency. The ACCM requirement is if you do not pass your step 3 by the second year of residency, you cannot progress any further, and you lose your residency, and the director of program will be very upset because now they have a vacant slot they have to fill. So that's why if you have step 3 and if you have time and you pass it before your residency, that will be preferable by a lot of programs and may have a slight edge over those who haven't got step 3. Again, it's a 2-day exam. First one is all based on MCQs, 7-hour. Next day it's 9-hour. It's a lot more clinically advanced and few MCQs, but purely clinically oriented, and there are 13 case simulations, each of 10 to 20 minutes each. Next slide, please. Resources, very similar. UWorld, pick up one book. Here, online method will be very useful because they're all clinically related. And then there are self-assessment. It's called comprehensive-based simulations. And you can do these online, very easy. Passing score is again 209. Next slide, please. Everybody knows now the CS part of the step 2 has been cancelled permanently from January 26, 2021. And that's a good news. But I specifically write it, there is a big but. You have to satisfy that 2S requirement somehow. Next slide, please. And what ECSMG has done has created 6 pathways for those after the cancellation of CS. Those who have already passed CS that will stay. You don't have to worry about these. But those who haven't, and since 2020, you have to fit in one of these 6 pathways. And for all Avalon graduates, it's step number 3. Uh, sorry, I'm going ahead. I'll come back to this. Come back to the slide, please. Next slide. These are the 6 pathways. Those who are already licensed in another country, those who have passed CS already, or NAC-OSCE from Canada, or some other countries, they recognize their clinical skill attestation, Australia, Qatar, Singapore, and other countries. But our school recognizes number 3 because we accredited, and those graduates after 2018 can be clinically certified by the dean, which is Dr. Arja. So those who are rotating now, you don't have to worry about clinical attestation. When you finish, it will be automatically, you'll be clinically certified. And those who have federal loans, those who have, I've already mentioned these countries, and those who do not fit into any of the above 5 categories can, and graduates before 2018, you can still fulfill the pathway by doing what we call mini CX. And this is easy. You have to work with the preceptor, make a schedule to work with him. He will watch you take history and physical, and there is a special form, and he'll certify you. You need 3 of these to be certified pathway. Can you go back to the slide now, please? So that has become very important part of ECFMG certification. So you've passed your step 1, you have passed your step 2, and now you've got a clinical skill attestation following one of the 6 pathways. For most Avalon graduates is number 3, and that automatically falls in. You don't have to make any extra effort. When you finish your clinical rotations, you'll get your clinical attestation from Dr. Arja. Next slide, and go to the next year. Thank you. I have to mention this, and I have placed some emphasis. The reason being, we've had since it was started, since they canceled 2020 CS, OET, it's an English language test chosen by ECFMG for all IMG graduates. So this is same part of that CS exam that we used to have. The clinical skills is being certified by those 6 pathways, and for our students by Dr. Arja. The English language part is now replaced by OET. And we've had, unfortunately, a lot of significant number of failures, and you've got a good score, step 1, step 2, clinical skills, all done, and you go and fail the English language test, you will not be certified by the ECFMG. So that's why I like to spend few extra minutes here. The format is, it has got 4 parts: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. And the minimum passing grade in each part is 350. And the problem is, if you fail even one part, you get 320 on writing, then you have to take the exam and take all 4 parts again. That's why you have to spend little time of learning about this. Even if you are a native American speaking, if you're an IMG, you have to pass this test. And it is requirement for ECFMG certification. The last date of taking and getting the certification for OET is 31st of December. Okay, but I would like you to do it in as early as you can, preferably by November or early December. Next slide, please. How can you prepare for this? I mean, how do you prepare for an English language? There were so many sites online that you can go. I went through several. I picked up one. You can take any of these. It's called Osmosis. You can go on osmosis.com. The advantage of this, it has got sample tests, and it's free on each part. It has sample tests on listening, speaking, writing, and speaking. So you can at least review that. I have reviewed some of it, and this Osmosis is not in American English. It's a actual English from UK. So you will find some of the words are odd, but this is what I understand you get in your OET exam. You get some with a very strong accent, either New Zealand or Australian English, and some from English from England, and then some from American English. That's why I thought it may not be a bad idea to just, it takes an hour or less to review all this. You also have available, you go on to OET portal and you have several courses. The biggest one is the master class, which also has a lot of videos, books, sample tests and writing tests and examples, and they take you through it. And finally, if you have done one of those or you don't want to do it, I definitely recommend that you take at least the assessment test. It's a practice test for you before you take it. It's on the official OET website available. And if you do that, at least it gives you an idea what the format is like, what is going to be. I hate to see so many students, when they have passed all the steps and everything, just cannot be certified because of OET. So I wanted to just spend a few minutes, take it a little seriously. It takes maybe 2-3 weeks and you're done. Next slide, please. How to score. The reason now I'm emphasizing this, because your first part is pass and fail. You get 196, 197, you pass. You may get 260, you still pass. It's different on step 2 CK, because it's still going to be a 3-digit numerical grade. And now programs that used to emphasize on step 1 scores will be emphasizing all on step 2 score, because they have no other way to gauge the applicants who are applying for residency. So how do you get a better score? Don't take any rotations lightly. Take them all seriously, even if you don't like it. I don't like psychiatry, I don't like pediatrics. Well, somehow spend those 6 weeks productively, take it seriously, because you will get a lot of questions on those topics. Remember the breakdown of contents I mentioned. Number 2, NBME shelf exam. Most of you have taken lightly, but from this year, it is going to take 30% of your total clinical grade. 60% will be from the preceptor, 30% will be shelf exam, and the remaining 10% will be management of your logbook. So take it seriously. Not only that, it's a great preparation for CK, because these are the core rotation topics that you're going to get in your CK exam. So if you take a good shelf exam, you're already prepared for your step 2 CK. And as I mentioned before in my previous slide, emphasize on internal medicine, 12 weeks of rotations. And if you can do an elective, critical care elective is very helpful for CK, because it has all the systems involved in critical care. Next slide, please. Just a little background. I've gone through this several times before. Now it is the end of the academic cycle, because now we are in the matching process. Everybody is writing their rank order lists, and but this is the background. Last year we had all highest number of applicants, higher number of programs, higher number of match, and how the positions will feel. So all H is the highest number ever. I want you to see the match rates going down. The match rates for US graduates have stayed about the same, between 94 to 95 for last 20 years. That hasn't. What has significantly changed is the number of DO graduates that are matching, and especially since the match is combined now, MD DO match. So that has significantly changed. And the IMG was the highest last year. It has come down a little bit, but it's about very similar. It was up to 60 last year. It's now up to 57% for US and non-US graduates. There is minimal difference between the two. Next slide, please. This is just the background. I want to keep that in mind. The timeline is so important. I've been talking to several students in MD3 and MD4. They are in their clinical rotations, preparing, and going through. So these dates are extremely important. Keep that in mind. The portal opens in June, which has already opened, and from June to July and part of August, you got time to research, you're getting your documents ready, you're getting your MSPE, which is extremely important, and you're getting other documents ready. I'll go through that later. You'll be doing the research on these programs, and the sites available are the ACCM site is FRIDA. It is approved by ACCM, and there is other sites called Residency Explorer where you can get all the details about each program, each specialty, and also some of these give you where IMGs are preferred, which areas. But the important dates, two important, extremely important dates to keep in mind, it's September 1st and September 29th. September 1st is the date when you start applying for the RS application for residency, and September 29th, it used to give us much longer time. It used to be in October, but now they have shrunk this period between application and the MSPE release to the programs for the programs to review your whole application and MSPE and make a decision whether to call you for interview or not. The deadline is 31st of December, but that is too late because the interviews start in October, usually mid-October of the year of application, that is 2021. And the interviews go on almost till January, or in some programs up to February. Why is this so important? I think I've already mentioned before somewhere, but there is a slide coming up. 65%. It's a big number. 65% of letters of recommendation interview go out before mid-October, before the end of first week of October or mid-October. So if you apply early and have everything ready, your scores, your documents, you're way ahead of the remaining 35% of the applicants. Next slide, please. March 2 is important. I've been talking to some of the applicants already because March 2 is the deadline for rank order list. So the rank order list will be finalized by the programs whether you fall into that list or not. And that's why it used to be much later, the certification. Now most of the programs are expecting that certification, ECFMD certification is done much earlier, and they want their candidates to be certified when they develop the rank order list. And we've already mentioned what is required for certification. Step 1 score, Step 2 score, clinical skill attestation, and OET. Then the match week comes about, and then 15, 16, 17 is the SOAP match, and 18th of March is the actual match day. Next slide, please. Just SOAP match, I've already mentioned, it's for 3 days. The system used is the R3 system. So if you happen to be in the SOAP match, make sure you're constantly on the computer with R3 system ready to open, because they give you each day only 2 hours to decide. They contact, you're not allowed to contact, you're not allowed to call, you're not allowed to write any emails. You just registered as in the SOAP match, you will get a call or contact on R3 system from a program in Tennessee or Mississippi, and I said, I have a position in IM. I have your application on the SOAP match. This is blah, 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 1 or 2 lines. It will take a minute or 2. Are you interested? And you have to make a decision saying yes or no. If you say no, you go on to the remaining slots available on next day. But a significant number will say yes. So out of the 1,200 applicants, a significant number will be out because they've already been taken by saying yes. Now you have remaining, say, about 1,000 or so left. Next day, you get a call again, this time from New Jersey or Michigan, and we have a family medicine position available. Are you interested? You're given only 2 hours, and you have to make up your mind, say yes or no. And this is how it goes till all the positions are taken up on the match. And there are still some unfilled positions, and they give you a list after that. Next slide, please. I've already gone through this. Next slide. So this is the sample. This is the actual figures from 2021 match. And you can see what specialties are very popular with US graduates and what specialties are not. And less than 45% of the US graduates match in internal medicine, pediatrics, pathology, family practice, and prelim surgery. There is a tremendous competition on the plastic, otolaryngology, neurosurgery, thoracic surgery, vascular, and ortho. So this doesn't mean you cannot apply to those. If you got a very good score, I encourage them to go ahead and apply by all means. Next slide, please. Just a few words about Canadian match, because a lot of our graduates are Canadians. They are very similar requirements, except the dates have changed. And something else has changed, I'll tell you as we go along. So instead of doing the step 1 and step 2, you do MCQE, part 1 and part 2, except for application for residency, you need part 1. Part 2 is done just like part 3 in your residency. You can do it before if you want, but most of the Canadian graduates, they do it in their residency. That's part 2, very similar to step 3. They are required to do, applicants, NAC OSCE, which is a clinical skills exam, very similar to 2CS. They haven't canceled it, so you have to take it. And it's given only fixed number of times during the year. So and it's a very busy schedule. So make sure you apply way ahead of time. English test exam, just like OET. Now they have TOEFL or IELTS are the 2 English test exams you have to take. MSPR is same as MSPE. They still require personal statement like we do, and the letters of recommendation like we do in America. Next slide, please. As you can see, the number of positions are very limited. There are very few programs in Canada because there are fewer hospitals, the population is low, the residency spots are low. So we had 43,000 applications and 37,000 residency spots. Here they have 3,346. Majority are filled up by the Canadian medical graduates and very few by the, so there is a lot more competition for IMGs in Canada. They, on an average, a Canadian graduate does 2 to 3 special electives in the field of interest. In America, we require at least 1 extra electives in the field of interest. ER requires 2. The difference between US and Canada here is each province, in addition to the main match, has additional requirements, and you have to find out, go on their website in each province and find out what else do require. Not only that, each program requires additional requirements. For example, ER, IM, FM require different, so you have to go again on their site and find out what else they require. This doesn't happen in US. It's a across the board match throughout the country, and all states have same requirements, and almost all programs have same requirements. Whether you apply, I am in California, New Jersey, New York, Texas, anywhere, I am same. So for application to those who are applying for American residency, Canadian graduates, a J-1 visa will be provided through the ACFMG. A good resource book for application to Canadian match is called a match book, and it is produced by the senior Canadian medical students, and it's a good resource. Next slide, please. Timeline, as I've mentioned, it's slightly different. They also access the portal in July. They had program descriptions online. The difference here is they have very limited period of interviews. Our interviews start in mid-October and go almost up to January or into February, some programs. Here, there are only 2 weeks of interviews, and they're all virtual like we have here, but very limited period. And we submit our match, remember, the rank order list on March 2, they submit theirs on the 31st of March. Our match day was 18th of March, theirs is 12th of April. And there is a significance to this. What is the significance? In the past, till last year, Canadian match used to be before US match, and students used to go back and forth. Now, the Canadian match and US match have an agreement that any person who applies to both and matches in one, since US match is the early, and you match there in the US match, you'll be automatically taken off the match list in the Canadian match. So this is an internal understanding between the two match organizations. So you can apply to both, but you can be matched only in one. Next slide, please. So that's the significance. Those who are unmatched, just like the SOAP match, they have what they call second iteration. Second iteration is like exactly SOAP match. And you'll be again automatically go back into the match, and you'll be offered again. They already have their MSPR and transcripts, and you will be notified online if you're interested if you're matched in the second match or not. And that happens much later. Instead of 12th of April, it will be 12th of May. So you've got a match day much later, as opposed to our SOAP match was 3 days before the actual match. Next slide, please. I've mentioned before, what is required for USMLE certification: Step 1 score, Step 2 score, clinical skills, and OET. There are other documents that are required, but not for USMLE certification. There are additional documents that you should have. And these are diploma, certificate of graduation, transcript given by the medical school, MSPs done by Dr. Arja. Remember, MSPE 29th of September. That's very important. You want to be there as soon as the program is allowed to see your application MSPE. You want to be the first one when they click that button, because you will fall into that 65% that likely to get a letter for interview. So get all this ready. A lot of students I'm talking to now, I'm glad I'm telling them, but I have had students who are 2-3 months away from applying, and they haven't got their CV or personal statement. MD1, MD5 students, if you're listening, make files for your CV and personal statement now, 4 years or 2 years ahead of actual match, because you'll require a lot of revisions in your personal statement. You'll keep adding to your CV as you go along. Don't do it in the last 2-3 months before the RS application in September. You need to start doing it now. This is the one that you can do it. You can change. You can change the score. You can change the clinical pathways till you get into clinical. You can't expedite your date of your diploma. You can change the transcript, and you can change the MSPE. So at least do something that you can make a change and start now. Next slide, please. Commitment to specialty is important. They always ask in interview, and you're expected to show that in your CV and your personal statement. That means you do extra rotation, sure, because you need an extra letter of recommendation from a different preceptor, from a different hospital. Do rounds in your department, show interest by joining student groups in national organizations. If you are doing where there are residency, network with chairman and program director, show that you're interested. Next slide, please. Audition rotations, they were all banned during COVID. They just started in July. Unfortunately, because of the backup, a lot of US students are doing the extra audition rotations and sub internships. But if somebody offers you and you have a choice, don't give that up. That is very important. But they have already started in July this year. Next slide, please. Fourth year is an important year. You've finished all your core rotations, you're doing your electives, get your documents ready, get all your letter of recommendation, approach your preceptors and tell them what your field of interest is and where you're applying. Get your scores ready. All IMGs must have the results. Remember, this is from before, mid-October, I said. Mid-October, they start sending you letters for application. They moved it back. Everything should be ready by 29th of September. Choose proper electives in the field of interest. If you're doing family medicine or internal medicine, there's no point in doing neurosurgery elective. Get ready. All interviews are virtual. Dr. Arja had a great webinar of what is expected in virtual interviews. In the beginning, in 2020, when it started, even the programs we had a lot of problems. Not only the applicants and the students, even the programs have a lot of problems. How to do this? They were having, do through Zoom, do one day or combined or different preceptors. Now they are all pretty well standardized now. So if you can get a chance, go through the webinar that Dr. Arja had on virtual interview. Next slide, please. And finally, you passed, you've done everything, you're great. And I'm very pleased to say a lot of our students have got a lot of interviews this year. So if you get an interview, you stand a chance of matching. If you don't get an interview, it doesn't matter because you can develop a rank order list. And make sure this has happened before. I need to keep this in. I hope that those who are in their third and fourth year and applications already applying, you will be sent back the rank order list by the programs. And it's very important for you to approve that. If you don't click that button of approve, you will be out of the match. So it's such a simple step, and people tend to forget. You will get the list back to you for approval. Make sure you approve it. Keep that in mind. Okay, so when this is all done, you've got interviews, great, and you're nervous, preparing, putting your nice dress on for virtual interview. Make sure you have a good Wi-Fi, good internet, and a well-designated area. You have practice either with your friend or your family, your sister, brother, parents, anywhere. Practice it in front of the computer. Make sure you have a nice camera and a nice designated area. You don't want every 5 minutes somebody opening the door and say, your mom saying, I've got a nice sandwich for you ready. We don't want any interference. So once you have an interview date, that 45 minutes to an hour, you're locked in a nicely lighted room, nice camera, nice audio, and you have practice. Nobody interferes during that time. It creates a very bad impression on the person who's interviewing that there is so much disturbance. So you write a personal statement. Remember, MD1 can write it, MD5 must write it and get ready. But if you're the one of the significant ones who do in the last 3 months, you require at least 4 or 5 revisions before you said, uh-oh, now it sounds good. What do you write in it? You show your interest, why that is interest, where did you develop this, what did you do? Remember the additional commitments. What did you do further? What type of program do you want? All this comes in the personal statement. And what are your future plans? You should have a nice flow, starting with an interest. How do you develop the interest? The next paragraph will be what did you do to increase interest in that field? I did electives and I learned this, and I was so impressed with the preceptor because I learned this. And then this is what I plan to do. Next paragraph, this is what I plan to do. So that flow, and I've seen a couple of personal statements, 2 or 3 pages. That's too long. I never read, unless it was absolutely necessary, I never read any personal statement that was 3 or 4 pages. So I'll read the statement. If the flow is nice in the first paragraph, oh, that sounds good. Then I'll read that statement, even if it's only 1 or 1.25. So it should not be longer than 1 page or 1.25 page. There should be no mention of giving advice, no mention of religion, no mention of politics or trying to be arrogant or ethical. Remember, that's what. And if there is any issues or problems, be honest. Example, the gaps, be honest. Because if you're caught somewhere down the line, all that will be lost. Next slide, please. What are the, this has come from the program directors, from the ECFMG. I haven't made this up. It gives you an idea how you write your personal statement. Next slide, please. What are the do's? Passion, commitment, we've already mentioned. Why do you want to practice here? Personal experience, I mentioned the extra electives you do and your experience in that first 1 or 2 paragraph. Goal, that was the future. Why should you be in the program? You're selling and they are buying. They are looking for a good resident and you're looking for a job. So sell it to the program. We already mentioned honest. And if you're not honest, it's a red flag. And I said, remember, it takes 4, 5, 6 proofreadings before you said, oh, that sounds great. So keep writing. Let others read it, but not write it. Let others listen to your reading while you're and say, oh, that sounds good. And it should be 1 page and should not be long. Next slide, please. Do not copy. There are a lot of organizations, you pay $100, they'll write it for you. But it becomes almost like a template and the program director will know it. It should come from you, not from organizations, not from services or templates, not from friends or family. It's about you. They can tell you this is not right. They can advise you, but it should be all about you and no one else. Don't write a whole CV, because CV you have to submit separately. That's why it should be concise, should be flowing good, and 1 page. No mention of religion and politics. Don't ask about time off. How am I going to earn? What are my benefits? You don't put that in your personal statement. And you don't write anything negative about anyone. Take time, proofread. Start writing. Deep time, proofread. MD1, MD5. Next slide, please. Where to apply? And we've already mentioned Frida and Residency Explorer. Which region, the certain preference, your family lives there, I like the weather there. But make sure when you research, the program is stable. You don't want to have the faculty on the process of leaving. You don't want your program director leaving in 6 months. It's a stable faculty, stable program. All the residents are happy. Avalon graduates, we have developed a list for you where our graduates have already matched. From 2015 to 2021, we have a list for you. I strongly suggest at least go through the list and apply to those programs where they have already got Avalon graduates, and hopefully most of them have done very well. They see your application and say, I see Nisha Patel was here. She's in 3rd year now. She's from Avalon. Okay, let's see this application. Satisfied residents in that program, you'll begin a check. Not only that, we have made sub lists separate for IM, FM, all the programs that they have matched. We have got a separate list. Asked our clinical department for the list and apply there. And some of the states are IMD friendly. Some of them don't even accept you for rotations, but I'll show you where our students have matched. So these are very IM friendly states: New York, New Jersey, Florida, Texas, Illinois, Michigan. Next slide, please. Remember I said this is from AMA, not from me, American Medical Association. 4 IMGs, 4 tips. What are those? Apply early. Why? Because 65% of the letters of interview go out by it used to be end of October, now it is mid-October, because MSPs moved up and RS applications moved up. IMG friendly programs, I've already mentioned. IMG friendly states, we've already mentioned. Interpersonal and interreaction. Remember, I said networking. Don't fake it, don't lie. And lastly, due to some reason, you do not get match. Don't be disappointed with a bad result. Keep on trying, keep yourself busy, do some extra rotations, do some research, because after the match, on the 18th of March, so till the September, April, May, June, July, August, September, you've got 7 months to work and beyond to improve your educational experience and CV. So don't give it up. If you don't match, this is the time to start working hard and improve so your RS application is much better than last time and you stand a better chance. We've had students match who have graduated in 2014, 2015, but they have done a lot of extra work and improved their application and CV to show that they haven't given it up. Next slide, please. This is the same slide. This is from an RIMP. It's not my slide. This is from directors. What is it? Look at the first two one. Program directors interviews that have sent already letters of interview, time period. First, October 1st. Now it's moved back. So 18, 47%. So that's equal to 65%. Remember that AMA figure? 65% of letters of interview are gone by mid-October. Now you can keep applying in November, December, and January, because 31st of January you can keep applying. You'll still, but the chances are you'll fall in that 35% for coming for interview. Next slide, please. Remember that there are about 30 factors that are considered. This is from the program directors, and this is the most recent. The most recent one was 2020. This is from the program directors. I have picked up only the top 10 important factors that they choose to call you for an interview. And step one used to be and is still the top one, except there will not be a 3-digit score. There'll be a pass and fail. So immediately the importance goes to number 4, which is step to CK, which still has a 3-digit score. LORs we've talked about, MSPs we've already talked about, plus your grade and personal statements. Next slide, please. So once you've got a letter of interview and you've passed that, now you're nervously waiting. You've done 3 interviews, 6 interviews. One of our students has got 30 interviews. Now you're nervous and you're waiting. What are you waiting for? You're waiting for March 2nd. Remember the rank order list, what the programs are going to put your name. Are they going to put you number 1, number 2, number 8, number 15? And you have to put up a list also. So suddenly the emphasis is changes. So how do you get on that rank order list? They're not any more concerned about your step 1, step 2, I did this, I did that. They know all that. They've written your, they've seen your application, they've seen your CV, they got your MSPs. Based on that, they've called you for an interview. So now it's something different. What is different? How do you communicate? How are your personal skills? How do you get along with people? Every second word is a 4-letter word in your sentence. You're out. Are you nice to people that you're talking to? Are you nice to your colleagues and friends? Are you nice to if you're given a tour or a resident interviews you? It creates a tremendous amount of impression. The resident feedback is extremely important. Step 1 will not be there anymore because it's pass or fail. The program directors are least concerned. You got 196, they know you passed, but they are very much interested in your step to CK score. Plus, what else are you doing? How do you get along? Are they going to? You got 260, the highest maybe 276 on the step to CK. You got 265, and you passed. But you're such a pain in the neck. Every week I hear complaint from the nurses or other fellow residents. This is program director talking. Similarly, the importance of step 3 comes up. If you've got 5 called for interview and only 1 or 2 have got step 3, the others have very similar step 1 and 2 score, you'll stand a better chance, because the program director doesn't want to deal you in the first 2 PGY1 and PGY2 year, whether you pass step 3 or not, because if you fail, he is in real, not you, he is also in trouble, because he's got a vacant position, he has to find someone. So this is where step 3 will say, oh, this guy's got pretty decent scores, he's got good MSPE, he's got good LOR, but he also has a step 3. I'm going to take him. Next slide, please. And this is just, I'll quickly run through. This is the list we have developed of our graduates that have already matched. And I just want to highlight some of the areas. Remember, the IMG friendly states that do not allow our students to rotate, but they match every year. That's why when I talk to students who call me or counsel, I tell them apply these places. The worst is you'll not get a call. But look, every year, Florida, New York. Next slide, please. Pennsylvania, Florida, Pennsylvania, New York. Next slide, please. Florida, New York, Pennsylvania. Next slide, please. Texas, Pennsylvania, New York, Texas. Next slide, please. Same, all the highlights from states that do not allow our residents to rotate, but they match our students. They match our students. And New York has the highest number of IM slots in the country. Next slide, please. 2020, lot of reds. Texas, New York, Florida, Pennsylvania. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Still going. Now California comes in. Remember, we talked about California. We still get a lot of questions. Should I apply there or not? Of course you should apply. Next slide, please. Next slide. Hopefully we'll have a better interview process. We've already talked about. It's just like exactly like a in-person interview, but everything is changed out due to COVID. And I have a feeling that this might become the normal process now that the programs are used to it, because it's very expensive and time consuming for you to go to 10 interviews in 10 different states and to arrange it for the programs. So this might become the normal. So keep it in mind and pay special attention how you do your virtual interviews. There are so many different formats. Yeah, either the program director or associate director or a preceptor might interview, 1 or 2 of those, 10-20 minutes, or they might be separate, or they might be sitting in a conference room, all 4 of them, and interviewing you. So there is a different format. But make sure, again, you have assigned allotted time, place, computer, internet, everything for that period of 45 minutes to an hour. And finally, next slide, please. Write a thank you letter. And who do you write to? How do you write to? Yeah, these are the different. How do you prepare for the interview? Sorry, thank you letter will. I have a format to show you how to write that. But what happens during the interviews? This is what they usually ask you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, and you say your characteristics, your personality, that you get along with everyone, that you don't hopefully fight, every week someone saw your complaints. No, you're very hard working, you're a team member, and you like this, you like that. Well, what are you looking for in the program? Are you are looking for 2 years extra of research, or do you want a community-based program, or you want a good balance? What are you going to do after residency? Oh, I'm going to go to Texas because my family is there and I intend to practice in a small community. Or no, I'm going to go to a big city and I'm going to, do some other fellowship. How do you handle disagreements? There may be questions on COVID. Do you do any, this is now extracurricular, outside the educational part or the professional part. Do you volunteer? A lot of charity work? Do you travel? You like outdoor sports? Things like that. Why do you like internal medicine? Why not surgery? Why not, cardiology? So you have to be ready to answer those. Practice again. So there are some standard questions you should be ready to answer. They often say, where do you see yourself in 10 years? What do you do for fun? I already mentioned that. Don't be grumpy. Smile and look into the camera, because that's the eyes you're looking into, the program director or the interviewer. Don't look down, don't look left, don't look right. Don't let the cat run into the room or door. Focus, 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 face to the camera. So when we used to have in person, smoking and drinking is out of, and no 4-letter words, even if you're joking. Next slide, please. And who do you, this is important. When you're doing an virtual interview, please make sure you have a small paper or a pad and a pencil right next to you, because I want you to quickly write down the name of the guy who's interviewing you. Person, he or she, doesn't matter. Resident or program director, doesn't matter. Write it down. And write down their title, whatever they are: resident, chief resident, program director, preceptor, surgeon, cardiologist, whatever. Write it down, name, write down. And when you write the letter, make sure you mention the name. You don't write hi, or Mr. Program Director, or dear Program Director. You write dear Dr. Smith underneath Program Director, and then you write your letter. Dear John Kendall, or whoever, Chief Resident, write your letter. Dear so-and-so, name is very important. And you must write to the program coordinator. Sandy Smith, she took your calls, she took all your emails, she got your all documents. She is the one who prepares the files for the program director. Thank her for all the help and the coordination for you to make a successful applicant. So write down to the coordinator. Okay, next slide, please. Your feedback from this, there is a lot of repetition, but there are a lot of emphasis on important points. Plus, if there are any changes, every webinar, I update all my slides. So your feedback is important. You're most welcome to ask questions. And due to some reason we are unable to, you're welcome to write an email to me, and I'm happy to answer if I can. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Dr. Amin.
Sure, Dr. Ghani. Let me check if we have received questions in the background. We have received few questions in the background, Dr. Ghani. Are you ready to take them?
Yes, I'm ready to take.
Sure. So if I register for CK exam but don't take it when the residency application is submitted by OCT first, will I still have residency interview?
Very unlikely. It used to be till very recently, you can still apply. There's nothing wrong with that with a step 1 score. But it's preferable. Remember that 65% when they first click and they see step 1 score and don't see and it's going to be pass and fail unless you have a score you've already taken before 26th of January, but they don't have a CK2 score. It creates a little bit of hesitancy on the part of the program to send you a letter of application. That's the only problem. There is nothing wrong. You can apply, and hopefully you take an exam, you take it on the 1st of September, the date of RS application, and it takes 4 to 6 weeks. Normally it's 3 to 4 weeks, but there is a lot of internal organization going on, and they said the ECFMG has already announced the USMLE Step course could be delayed, especially if you take it in May, June, and July. So they have already announced this. So it takes 4 to 6 weeks. So it may go up to October. You might still be all right. But if you go into November and December, you're getting late. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You can send your CK score later, but then you will be falling into that 35% category. That's the only problem. Otherwise, you can, yes, you can apply with your step 1 score. Next question, please.
Can I apply to more than one specialty at the same university or hospital? Do the
Yes,
program managers see other? Do the program managers see the other application on different program from the same applicant?
No, they don't, and you're most welcome to. And I emphasize that you should apply in an FM, and surgical program in the same hospital. Yes, you can. And most of these applications go through the Department of Education and to the individual department. So Department of Education knows, and this has become very common now. They are required to funnel those applications to individual departments. So you apply to FM, IM, and surgery, goes to the medical education department, and then they send those applications to individual departments. So there's nothing wrong with it. You should, and if you have an intention of applying into the same hospital, you should. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, next question.
Can we apply to residency in New York State?
Yes, I just showed you how many of our graduates matched in New York. And in fact, I tell those who I counsel or those who have asked me, I tell them even in my webinar, please go ahead and apply. I just told you the largest number of IM programs in the country are in New York State. So you apply and you don't get it. So what? But you stand a better chance of matching. So just because our students do not rotate through New York, they don't recognize our accreditation, doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. If our students have matched in New York, New Jersey, Florida, Texas, all these states who do not allow our students to rotate that, but they match them. Now, it's a different question whether can you practice in New York or Florida or Texas. That is different because it's a different agency that gives you license to practice, and a different agency that gives certification of completion of residency. So what I normally say, it depends on individual basis whether those states will allow you to practice or not. But my answer is go ahead and get an IM in residency in New York, get your residency certification, and if you don't allow you, you can apply. If they don't allow, this is, oh, you're from Avalon, you didn't do the clinical rotations here, we can't give you license. Apply to state next door. You can go to any other state with a residency from New York or any other state that you can apply. So that should not hold you back. Next slide, next question, please.
Do we need the OET to meet the third pathway?
Do we do OET too?
Yeah, do we need the OET exam to meet the third pathway?
Yes.
The language.
The only thing you do not need there is the mini-X clinical skills, because if you're after 2018 graduate and you're doing rotation in Avalon hospitals, you will be clinically certified by Dr. Arja, the clinical skills, but you still need the language, OET language course to pass.
Do we have to take the OET exam before December 31st or have the ECFMG certificate before the December 31st?
No, ECFMG certification now is moved up. As long as you have the ECFMG certification by end of January or even into February, you're fine. But for the OET has limited the deadline for the OET. They have set the deadline as 31st of December because they know that the result will take another 3 or 4 weeks to come back, and then you'll be eligible for ECFMG. If you take the OET, beyond that, you're not going to get the result back in time for ECFMG certification. So that's why as soon as you finish your step 1, step 2, if you have time, take OET, or make sure you made the RS application September 1 deadline. then take your OET. You got September, October, November, and December, but I would prefer you take it in September or October and get done with it.
How
Next
long
question.
can we, yeah, how long can we expect the virtual interview to last? Are
We
we
don't know.
expecting?
You mean each interview to last?
Yes.
It varies from program to program. But that's why I told you, I would block at least 45 minutes to an hour, because the format of virtual interview varies from program to program. Some programs that I know of, they have a big conference room with program director, associate program director, 2 or 3 preceptors are sitting there, and they'll interview you. One by one, they'll ask questions. In some program, I have seen 2 at a time, one preceptor or 2 preceptors and a resident in room, and there'll be 3 or 4 rooms. I've seen one format where each and every interviewer, 3 or 4 of them are in separate room on Zoom. So they will send you the format. When the program calls you for an interview, they'll send you the link and the whole format as to how it is. But that's why I said, irrespective of the format, make sure you have at least an hour blocked off, because you will be sitting in the same room. They are in a different room or different format, but you're sitting in one chair, you're not moving anywhere. So make sure you block for at least an hour or so. Next question.
Since Avalon has rotations in Arizona, have Avalon students found any residency spots in Arizona?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm surprised, because I have told some of my students to do that. Either they do not apply, because I haven't heard from anyone. They rotate there. They have an internal medicine residency. They have a surgery residency, and they have a family practice residency. And you would think that those students should be able to match. Um, and this has been uh, pretty recent now, become more and more students are going to Arizona, and it's a good setup there for rotations. And when somebody again talks to me, I tell them, go ahead and apply there, because you talk to preceptors and program directors on a daily basis. But they haven't matched in 2021 and 2021 so far. Yes.
Have you gotten any feedback from Avalon students who have taken step 1 now that has pass and fail, and how is their experience was?
No, we haven't heard from anyone, because the date was 26th of January. So it's only been not even a month yet, and the results may not come back for 4 to 6 weeks. And in the beginning, they have already announced, even for step 1, the results could be late because of this change. They are going some internal organizational changes. That's why they feel the results could be late. So we haven't heard yet, but we are keeping an eye and keeping a tab on those who have taken and passed. Then we are going to contact them, because once they pass, we get the result back, we know, then we will contact them and find out. But up till now, it's not been it's going to be a month on 26th, 1 month. 26th of January, you were allowed to take under the new format.
Dr. Ghani, can you please advise what else can we do to prepare for CBS CE exams?
Which exam? Give me again.
CBS CE.
See, I still didn't get those letters in the last. What can you?
It's CBS CE. Maybe it is related to some other country. We can get back to that question via email after
Yeah,
checking.
because I don't know that any of that exam. You know, we know the step 1, we know the step 2, we know a lot of NBMEs and self-assessment exams. I don't know
It's
CV.
a,
Pardon?
oh, it's a CBSC exam. It's not, it's something else, Dr. Ghani.
Oh,
Maybe we will get back to,
CBSC. Oh,
yes,
CBSC. That's a
yes,
comprehensive
CBSC.
basic science exam.
Yep. Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is their preparation is very similar to what you go through all your basic sciences. While you're doing the basic sciences exam, I would, for CBS, comprehensive basic science exam, I would still go through the Q bank questions, and a lot of students are doing through the Lecturio, because some of the faculty also uses Lecturio for questions, and it's a good preparation. And I would still prepare as if you're preparing for step one. So take one or two sample self-assessment NBAB exams. You can even take the older one. Take, for example, take NBME 7 or 8 or 9, one of them, and see how you do. You take Lecturio, and you also do some UWorld on the basic sciences. So if you can do those three, you will be reasonably well prepared, because not only you just finished all your basic sciences, you just finished your Kaplan, and that's when you take the basic science. At the end of your year 4, you will be taking the comprehensive basic science. So I think those are the two or three resources that can use to prepare for comprehensive basic science.
Is there a possibility for pathology electives for the students?
We haven't had any, but we can look into it. If somebody is interested, we can look into it and arrange for. Yes, by all means. If somebody is interested in pathology, you just call the coordinator, clinical coordinators. We haven't had a single person request yet in the last few years I have been involved this. Now I'm not involved with clinical rotation anymore, but I haven't had anybody request for pathology rotation, but it's a great one. Somebody who's interested in pathology, yes, you should do an elective, and we'll look into it and we can arrange it.
Thank you. What is the chances of getting into a dual program such as family medicine and ER?
There is no, the only dual program that I know is MedPeds. I don't know of, there is a family medicine residents after graduation are allowed fellowship in ER. But I don't know ahead of time, before you finish your before your residency, you're matched into a ER fellowship. I'm not aware of. If there are programs, dual programs like that available, let us know. We'll look into it. But family medicine has gradually evolved and obviously very popular. There hardly used to be any fellowships. There used to be mainly, geriatric and sports medicine and ER. Now they have almost, I think, 10 or 11 fellowships available, family medical residents.
Does Florida allow us to practice after residency?
Pardon?
Does Florida state allow us to practice after residency?
We don't know. Remember, I told you during my webinar that these are the states that do not allow, and I don't know why, because we are accredited school, and there are several states that do not allow. But now we just got heard from someone. This could be on individual basis. We heard from someone who got a license in New York, and we've got one in Texas that was approved, which do not allow our residents to rotate. And we got a second request in Texas again, and we are reasonably confident that she'll be allowed to. She applied for license and we got papers to fill in. So there are certain states that do not allow rotations and do not allow license to practice, but more and more states are allowing it now. Even as the most difficult states used to be California and New York. California has already opened up for us. And I have a feeling as the time goes, due to the shortage of physicians and healthcare manpower is so much shortage, that more and more states will allow students from accredited schools to practice.
What happens when you have gaps, attempt on exam, and average step score Is it still possible to get into residency applying in this winter with COVID still present, helping us out?
I was getting I'm getting some breakup. I didn't
Oh, okay,
understand.
sure,
Repeat it.
sure. What happens when you have some gaps, attempt on exams, and average step score? Is it still possible to get into residency with all these things?
Yes, by all means. I mean, gaps are not unusual, but you have to be very careful because even on your RS application, there is a column where it says mention if you had any gaps. Like I told you before, be honest, whatever the reason for gap is. You can say, I was preparing, and most of the time it's financial or it says family or health issues or whatever it is. That's why there is a gap. And as a reasonable gap, if you get 6 or 9 months or a year gap, then you definitely have to explain why that gap is, and be honest in explaining why that gap is. Yes, there can be gap. Yes, you have to explain, and you can take even after a gap your step 2 exam.
Yeah, we still have few more questions, Dr. Ghani.
Okay.
Is residency in Canada only for Canadian student or
No,
Canadian citizens?
no. Even foreign students, they prefer Canadian. That's preference. They first, in order of preference, they prefer Canadian citizen, Canadian graduates. Then they prefer IMGs, Canadian graduates, and then IMGs. So yes, but because of the very limited number of spots, and you saw how the numbers were, only about like 400-500 for IMGs. So now American international medical graduates. But if you also happen to be citizens, then you stand a better chance of matching.
For NBME pass score, is there still a 3-digit score, or will it be a percentage to reflect recent
In
changes?
which one? Which step?
NBME pass score?
Okay, MBME pass at the moment, it's going to be score. In fact, it was just notified, and it's going to be implemented from. Um, this is about the comprehensive exams now. They are going to give you a numerical score, but the way they give the uh, whole result, the detailed summary of the result of the exam has been changed. And they are going to also do what you call prediction of passing step exams. So if you take a comprehensive basic science and you score, and I'm telling this from their site, if you score between 71 to 78, you stand 90% of chance, predicting 90% chance of passing step 1. And then in the breakdown of contents, then they tell you in each content of the exam, for example, diagnosis, management, and then the system wise, whether it's a GI, cardiology, nephrology, endocrine, whatever. Then they give 3 columns. One is normal, pass. Then the left column is below normal, and the right column is above normal. And they are sort of color bars. In fact, the site shows a green color bar in the report for the exam. So yes, there will be numerical. Yes, there will be additionally predictive, and it will also show. This was based on those who have taken 1 week after finishing their rotation and on their basic science courses. The result was slightly different after 2 weeks. They have reported only 2 types of students, 1 week after and 2 week after. So the format is going to change as to how they report the comprehensive basic exam.
So we are allowed to go into residency in New York, but not to practice medicine as a physician. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, like I told you before, the licensing agency in each state in this country, each state is totally different from medical education and residency certification. That is done by individual programs under the guidance of ACGME and RRC. RRC is Residency Review Committee, and ACGME is American Graduate Medical Education Organization. The whole medical education is under the umbrella and guidance of ACGME. But there are some state rules and regulations, and under those rules and regulations, there are separate rules and regulations for by each hospital. That's why, though we do not have rotations in New York, when you apply, certain hospitals, if they like your application, will say, okay, we'll go and appeal to the local educational board that we want to take this resident in our residency. Fine, you finish 3-4 years of residency, you get a legal, authentic graduation certificate from residency, and then you start applying. I want to start practice. When you apply to a totally different residency agency, and that agency grants you license to practice in that state. New York at this time do not allow those Avalon graduates because they haven't done rotations in their state. So they don't accept that. Even if we are accredited by ACCM and CAAM-HP, they say we do not. But an individual program can request on your behalf if they like the candidate. That's why we have every year 1 or 2 candidates match in New York. When you apply for license to practice, we've had 1 and 2 in Texas, same scenario, that have allowed license to practice. And I think, like I said, as the time goes, this is gradually going to change. They will allow more and more schools that are accredited their graduates to practice. There are still about 5 or 6 states that do not allow our graduates to practice in that state, but more and more are.
Okay. And which those states will be? 5 or 6?
Pardon?
Which those states will be, like where
the ones that I know of, there might be 1 or 2 more, but I can get the whole list from our clinic. You can get it from the clinical department. But New York, New Jersey, Florida, Texas, Indiana, and there are 1 or 2 more. Used to be California, not anymore, and 1 more, I think. The rest they allow.
And this is the last question of the webinar. Let me get that thing for you. If Avalon students choose to do their core rotation in Arizona, is the student able to do their electives rotation in Texas?
In where? What is the next one? Electives where?
Texas.
Okay. Yeah, you can do that. But remember, you have to do all your core rotations in one of the 3 sites in Avalon. And if you choose to do in Arizona, great, no problem. Now in electives, there are 24 weeks of electives, out of which you have to do 12 weeks in the Avalon system. That means you have to do the electives in Arizona, Chicago, or West Virginia. Now you can do, and we would love to have you do all 24 in any of these 3 sites, Avalon sites, or you must do 12, but you can do the remaining 12 outside the Avalon system. But for those, you have to find the hospital and the preceptor, because we have no way of knowing where you want to do. Once you find out, say somewhere in Michigan or New Jersey or Texas or Florida, then you say, I want to do 4 weeks of cardiology in Florida in this hospital, and this doctor has said he will allow me to do it. You contact the clinical coordinator in the clinical department, give them the details, and the process has to be exactly same as doing electives in Avalon system. So we will give you special forms. The assessments has to be the same. The evaluations has to be the same. The curriculum has to be the same. So all these will be provided to you once you choose, once you know the preceptor. Yeah, you can do 12 weeks outside of Avalon, but still you have to go through our clinical department.
Thank you, Dr. Ghani. So that was the last question. And again, thank you all of I thank all of you who are in attendance, and good night.
Thank you, and please send the feedback, and thank you, Amin, for helping me organize this.
You're very welcome. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Ghani. Good night to
Thank
all
you.
of you.
Bye.